All right, so the brief history of Rogue. I don't know anything that I didn't read on Wikipedia, so you should just check it out if you're interested. The short version is, here's a screenshot, and basically in the early 80s, like in 1980, Unix was popular on campuses. Everyone had big mainframe computers and terminals, which could only display ASCII. And so one of the earliest games, and students would make games for them. And one of the earliest games was called Colossal Cave Adventure, or just Adventure. And it was sort of, it invented the concept of the text adventure. And so a bunch of people, two people, who were fans of Adventure, Colossal Cave Adventure, were also fans of Dungeons and Dragons. And they thought, instead of making sort of a dialogue tree kind of gameplay, what if we could make more of a Dungeons and Dragons kind of grid-based gameplay on this computer so we can play it. And that game was Rogue. And like Adventure, it was distributed with source code, so what happened was they made it, and they released it, and then everyone on every campus would make their own version, and it would kind of, get remixed or whatever. That term didn't exist. But anyways, so Rogue was the originator, but it's very simple and basic, and actually that's a screenshot of NetHack. So Rogue, and then there was a game called Hack, which was a bit more complicated than Rogue, and then there was NetHack. So Rogue just sort of created this genre called, obviously, Roguelikes. And I think I'm going to talk about NetHack, even though I don't like it, because it's the most roguelike. So it's sort of like the epitome of roguelikeness. But that's what makes it a problem for me, because it hasn't aged well. It's like one of those. I haven't read any big difficult novels, but I would imagine it's the exact same thing. Where if you're willing to really work hard, it's unlike anything else, and you get a lot out of it. But personally, I have a low attention span, so I like the modern games where they've taken the ideas and kind of made them a bit more user-friendly. But I'm going to talk about NetHack a bit, just because I think it definitely gives you an idea of the flavor of the roguelike. All right, so that's a screenshot, and here is an annotation of what the hell is going on in that screen. Like you can see, there's a cat, there's you, and there's a dungeon made out of rooms and hallways that you're exploring. And one day I aspire to get over the learning curve and play NetHack. Now, I know, if anyone knows Dwarf Fortress, I know I compared it to Dwarf Fortress, but it's a million times easier. It's not as bad as Dwarf Fortress at all. It's just that Dwarf Fortress is so bad, you can be a lot better than it and still be super user-unfriendly. So, but anyways, all right. So I'm going to give 2 examples of things that happen in NetHack to sort of, hopefully you can infer what the hell is going on in this sort of game. So here's something from the wiki. It's one of the many ways of defeating one of the many random special demons you might encounter on your adventure, Dweeblex. And what I really like is all you need, it's very simple, you just need a unicorn horn and a wand of digging and a weapon. So I hope that you get the sense that it's a really rich and complicated world, and it's absolutely up to you to figure out how to use what you have and the context that you're in, and your human ingenuity to sort of solve problems, and things work the way you would expect. So, for instance, when Dweeblex swallows you, if you use a wand of digging, that hurts him a lot, because you're digging out of the inside of him. My other example from NetHack that I really like is, here are the causes of insta-death. Now, this isn't just death. This is you immediately die when this happens. My favorite is genociding own race. So I hope that this gives you a sense of the depth and the breadth of these games. It's just super interesting. Like, basically, if you pick on a specific race of enemy, and you just kill them mercilessly, once you've killed enough of them, they go extinct in the game and you never see them again. So if you do that to your own race, you go extinct. All right, so as I mentioned, the origins of the roguelikes are in the context of a Unix mainframe that you're accessing via terminal. So you've got a keyboard and you've got a screen that can only display ASCII. And that it's informed the design of the games a lot, but often to their detriment. So the first and the biggest by far problem, and it's completely unjustifiable in this day and age, is the interface. So here's a sum. This isn't even the complete set. This is just all I could fit on the screen. Here are some of the actions you can take in NetHack. You can wipe your face. And so the thing is, it's super important. Having dozens and dozens of actions directly enables the sort of emergence and complexity that's required to make this kind of game work. But what's really stupid and wrong-headed is this horrible, archaic, like, computer nerd. I don't understand how no one thinks of this, but just, for instance, the concept that it's lowercase w to equip a weapon, uppercase W to equip armor. That's just stupid. It's a computer. If I equip something, I should be able to choose what I want to equip, and it can just figure out if it's a weapon, equip weapon. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't have to be that way, and that's why I really prefer modern roguelikes, because they have that kind of understanding of usability and user experience that takes the essential interesting part and removes as much as possible the painful learning curve, although there still is a bit of a learning curve. I have to be honest about that. All right, so the next example, so that's the number one problem, is the input part of the interface. The second problem is the output part. And so this is, roguelikes exceedingly are ASCII art based. And again, it's for historical reasons. That's what you had. Their Unix terminals had no concept of graphics, it was just a screen of characters. And actually, like, Rogue came about because someone wrote the library curses that maybe people know, and they were like, oh, look, we can do a whole screen of ASCII. Awesome. So this is obviously another learning hurdle, right? It's just like the problem with those keyboard shortcuts is it's all the fun of learning Photoshop, because it's just hotkeys, 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 only there's no undo, and if you make a mistake, you're dead. So this is like, the ASCII part is still a hurdle. It's definitely not easy or fun, but it's much less of a hurdle because hotkeys are arbitrary. ASCII, the best games take pains to make things intuitive. So for instance, if you see a lowercase d, that's a dog. If you see an uppercase T, that's a troll. And they also use sort of visual puns. Like for instance, a potion is very often an exclamation mark because that sort of looks like a test tube with a stopper, right? Or if you see in this screenshot, to the left of the @ symbol, sort of in the center, there's a golden O. So if you know the game Doom, that's a pain elemental, and they're big yellow spheres. So it's sort of a visual pun. So I think the ASCII part of it is not as big a learning hurdle. It's not so bad. And also, unlike the really stupid key command thing, there's a good, valid reason for this choice, and it's because ASCII art has a really amazing capacity to convey a large amount of information very clearly and unambiguously, and it lets you immediately read the scene and understand what's going on. And since it's so complicated, it's very important that you're not confused about what's going on. So I sort of like, the metaphor I like to use is, it's like looking at a chessboard instead of looking at an actual battlefield. It just lets you, it's clear, it lets you read it, and it's kind of abstracted. And so I would argue it's okay, but if it's a big problem for you, most roguelikes these days have tile sets, so you can have a graphical version if you like. I think it's inferior because it ends up being much more slow and tedious, and you can't fit as much information on the screen. I just don't, I mean, that's just me though, whatever. All right, so hopefully I've sort of sketched out something that has got you interested. I'll try to very briefly explain some details, but I'm obviously probably leaving out a bunch of stuff. So there's the International Roguelike Developers Conference is an annual event, and in 2008 they came up with what's known as the Berlin interpretation, which is like a set of 15, it's their attempt, this is how hard it is to define what a roguelike is. It's the International Roguelike Developers got together and tried to come up with a definition, and their definition is 15 properties which hold in varying amounts, and which it's both very vague and very technical. So I've tried to distill it to what I think are the most salient features. So like permadeath, once you die, that's it, you lose everything, you start the game from scratch. Randomly generated, obviously, different stuff happens all the time, different terrain, different items, different monsters. Turn-based, grid-based, not like, I mean, people would argue whether that's vital, and ASCII graphics definitely aren't vital, but the complex simulation, and definitely like the bottom line is, roguelikes are about the joy of learning. And I'm going to get back to that briefly. So these are the properties, and again, like a list of properties doesn't really tell you anything, so I'm going to try it from a different angle. So the way I like to think about roguelikes is they're the exact opposite of everything modern video game design is at the current time. So it's like literally, it's just, and that's what makes them so refreshing and so interesting and so like super exciting to play. It's because it's something you're just not getting at all. Most modern games, I mean, you can just read through the list, but it's like, you know, the idea of the modern game is, what can you do? Usually you can move and you can shoot, and that's essentially it. Whereas in a roguelike, you have dozens of actions. It's a very rich simulation. So in a modern game, because of that design, because they've decided to boil down your actions, so like, maybe 3 things, 4 things at most. Anytime you have to figure out anything, it's like there's no brain power involved. It's like, I know I'm going to move and or shoot. And then that's going to solve whatever problems the game throws at me. So there's absolutely no learning. There's no, like Cornell calls it, there's no responsibility. You can just, like, it doesn't require problem solving, it doesn't require thought. You're not making important choices.